Hello.
Hello.
I will just introduce our guest here, Brian, who has a really incredible story of recovery to share with us that I thought was really worthwhile just to put out there for some people who might be struggling or others who might not realize just how powerful plants, medicinal mushrooms, and the power of our minds are in healing ourselves. So I wanted to introduce this to you. Hello, Brian. Hi. Can you say a few words about you?
I sure will. My name is Brian. I'm from the United States, and my journey started actually at age 29 in 1982. I was in a very severe car accident that ended with a broken neck, and the reason that was important is that the breaking of the neck opened up an avenue for the MS virus to enter my neurological system. And because of that, I was eventually diagnosed with primary progressive MS, multiple sclerosis.
And so I will just give a bit more detail. Multiple sclerosis is a neurodegenerative disease, which is thought to be a lifelong condition that worsens over time without cure, where the myelin sheet, which is the protective layer that helps the conductivity of our nerves, progressively unravels. And it usually starts with symptoms like pain and losing fine motor function, until over time, over some decades, people start to become paralyzed, and then the central nervous system and cognitive functions become affected.
Okay, yeah, so it basically, I walked with a cane immediately afterwards. I was able to move, but I was diagnosed as an incomplete quadriplegia. And from that, I kept seeing, I saw the doctor, but basically with Western medicine, they go to pills, and unfortunately I was put on severe painkillers, muscle relaxants. I took a total of 12 medications at one time.
Including opiates and psychiatric medications.
Yes, yeah. So I always felt that I wasn't addicted, but I was dependent upon them. Without pain control, I wouldn't have been able to be successful at anything. So there was a cause, there was a purpose for that, for a short term, but not long term. And 37 years is too long to be on something like that, but that's how it happened. But finally, I did have, did I mention surgery?
Yeah, so after your accident, 4 years after.
Yeah, 4 years after I finally had the neck surgery, my body repaired the break, but left something behind that had to be removed that was putting pressure on my cord. So once that was taken out, I stopped, the paralysis basically stopped at that point. And upon awakening after the surgery, my surgeon told me that I was in Michigan at the time, very north of the United States, near Canada. And the weather there, surrounded by lakes, is very up and down and not healthy for injured people like myself. So my doctor suggested that I move to the southwest of the United States, and I chose Arizona as a state. And I've been living there now for 35 years. And that's where I did my rehabilitation after the surgery. So I took his advice and I left within 8 weeks of my surgery. And once I arrived in Arizona, I went through a lot of rehabilitation, not just physical rehab, but all kinds of rehabilitation, because I was to the point to where I could not do certain things anymore, but I was still able to walk at that point. I was able to get back into the workforce, went into banking, and I was able to perform those duties for 12, 13 years. And then I started falling down. I started having issues that were not connected to quadriplegia at all, like temperature. I was only comfortable in a certain range of temperature, 68 to 72. That's all I could handle, you know. And luckily I live in northern Arizona, so it's not hot like Phoenix.
And so with all these symptoms and with a lot of testing, your doctor was eventually able to give you a diagnosis, right?
He was. It was unfortunately 4 years of testing. However, at the end result was that he diagnosed me with primary progressive MS. And at the time I was told there is no cure for it and you'll be progressively getting worse as time goes on. And originally that was a hard nut to crack, but I think after a year and a half or 2 years, I was able to start addressing the disease head on and got rid of the pity party, you know. And I must have tried, I researched the whole time, and I tried 20 or 25 different things that they think would help MS, you know. It is sometimes as ridiculous as getting purposely stung by bees. That was supposed to.
Oh, did you try that?
Oh yeah, I tried many things. But about probably 7, 8 years ago, a very good friend of mine told me about medicinal mushrooms, but he didn't elaborate. But luckily, I held on to just those 2 words, medicinal mushrooms. And in 2018, I had gotten double pneumonia, and that's usually what kills people with MS. And it took over 2 months to be healed from that double pneumonia, but once I was healed, I had new hope.
Yeah, and you survived it.
I survived it.
And maybe can you tell us a bit about what your health was like at this stage? I mean, the disease had progressed for many years.
Yeah.
Physically, cognitively.
To the point by 20, actually, I think by 1999, I was placed into a scooter originally, and then I had severe swelling in the ankles and whatnot. I had to get my legs up, and on a scooter you can't do that. So I was put in my first wheelchair about 1 year after the scooter. And so I spent 20 years in a wheelchair, a power wheelchair. And, I adjusted to it. I had a ramp van to get around. From my chair, I drove my van. It was my dinner table chair. It was my relaxation chair. And it was my bed. And I slept in it. I could recline all the way back. The legs came up. And my ankles went down. Everything was working. And for the first, probably 15 years of being in a chair, I continued to worsen. And towards the end, and when I got into the chair, I did have to retire from my job. And
then your memory was affected as well.
Yeah, by 2018, that's when my memory, short term, was reduced to, originally it was like 1 minute long, and then 45 seconds, eventually 5-10 seconds was my short-term memory span. So I kind of went silent after that. I couldn't remember long enough to hold a conversation. So I remembered that friend of mine mentioning medicinal mushrooms. So I Googled medicinal mushrooms. Today I've learned there's over 100 varieties of medicinal mushrooms, but only one came back that day, and it was lion's mane. And at the time they said it was helpful for dementia and Alzheimer's. And I felt like an Alzheimer's patient because no memory whatsoever. However, I just at that point just wanted to get my memory back. That's really all I wanted. My goal was not to cure MS because I'd been told it was incurable. But lion's mane proved different. And after 3.5 months of taking it twice a day at that point, I take it once a day now, but twice a day taking it, and slowly but surely I was getting my nerves to re-hook up. And not just the nerves in my neck that were broken and had to be cut actually from my surgery, but nerves throughout my body were slowly going away, and with the demyelination. So what lion's mane is best known for is the ability to remyelinate these nerves,
Mm-hmm.
and a very powerful mushroom. And so it kept healing me to the point to where I was able to eventually get out of my wheelchair and walk again. And it was only 2 years ago that I was able to park the wheelchair for good. Mm-hmm. And I parked my cane about a year ago.
Uh-huh. And now you're walking on the beaches of Portugal.
Yeah. And I do walk 4 to 5 miles every day.
Yeah.
And some days I walk as many as 10 or 12 miles.
Mm. And your memory came back within a few months, right?
Yeah, it did. That was the first thing to come back.
Yeah.
And that's really was my goal. But when it started healing, and it was painful at first, but then the next day I would have no pain. So it was painful like a bolt of lightning, you know, but that was simply the nerves finding each other again.
And you were able to come off the pain medication as well eventually, right?
Eventually, yeah. I took 9 months because I was up to a very high dose. So every month I would reduce it by 30 milligrams until after 9 months I got it down to, I think I was taking 7.5 milligrams, and I was up to 300, so that was almost nothing. Yeah. But it was still, I wanted it to get slow enough so I had not serious withdrawal problems. And on the anniversary, the 37th anniversary of my accident, is when I took the last portion of those pain pills. And I proceeded to gradually stop all the other medication as well. And luckily, during all this, I kept on doing liver function tests and whatnot, and my liver was never affected negatively, which was very fortunate. So once I was totally free of Western pain medicine, I kept researching the mushrooms because I had other issues that needed to be fixed. And I had so much confidence by this time in mushrooms that lion's mane showed me. I discovered 8 different mushrooms in a blend, that 4 of those mushrooms would heal my autoimmune diseases, of which I had about 12 at that time. And
such as?
Well, the first one, I was born with eczema and numerous food allergies. And then I eventually lost some of those allergies, but I still very allergic to eggs up until this trip, actually. I had a feeling I had cured everything, but I wasn't willing to try eating an egg, you know, because I would get very sick. So on the flight over, though, I did eat some food that had eggs in it and did not get sick. Yeah, so apparently I did cure all those diseases.
So I just wanted to mention the medicinal mushrooms which you used to get them a round of applause. Some of them are quite famous and some of them I didn't know before. So this is a blend from a company called Raw Forest Foods, and they call it Mycomedic 12 Rivers, referring to the 12 meridians in the body. And so these mushrooms are chaga, cordyceps, fu ling, maitake, reishi, royal sun agaricus, turkey tail, and yellow bracket. They come in a portion of 2 grams for a day, and each mushroom is in 250 milligram quantity within that blend. So you're having 250 milligrams of these mushrooms every day. And the lion's mane, you were taking 2 grams a day, right?
Originally, I was taking 4 grams a day.
In the morning and in the evening.
That's right.
Yeah.
But now I just take 2 milligrams in the morning.
Yeah.
And then the other blend I take as powder. The lion's mane I take as capsule now, and it's powdered in a capsule, but still 2 grams. And the 12 rivers I get as powdered form because it's a nice morning tea for me, and it starts the day just right. And it actually has kind of a cocoa flavor to it. So it's
I like it.
Yeah,
I like these medicine
nice.
mushrooms. So what kind of effects did you started noticing as you started taking this mushroom blend on top of the lion's mane?
Well, one of the things that had happened, and being in a wheelchair, I gained a lot of weight from no exercise. And I also, from the medicine I was on, that put 30 pounds on me. And then my thyroid went bad, and I had hypothyroidism for maybe 6 years as it was dying, and eventually I got Hashimoto's disease, which is when the organ dies. So that was a big weight gain problem as well. So what these mushrooms did for me, because 4 of them went to the immune system, the other 4 mushrooms healed go through the bloodstream into my major organs. And I knew I had plaque in my arteries, and I had heart problems in my family. So I figured I was going to follow that route. But once I began adding this to the lion's mane, I was able to start curing one at a time all of my autoimmune diseases, including the thyroid. So it came back, it's working perfectly today. I ended up losing 80 pounds, and I feel much younger today than I did 3 years ago. That's for sure.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
So, and you had some medical tests to actually give evidence to show that all of these diseases and health conditions were now reversed.
That's correct. Yeah.
So the fMRI for the nerve functions.
Yeah, MRI showed that I had no demyelination at all going on in my body, and that was wonderful news to hear that. And it also proved that I had now 100% nerve connectivity. Prior to the mushrooms, it was under 60%.
So you reversed
totally.
The process of degeneration that happened for MS.
Yes, that's right. And it's something that I'll take the rest of my life, because if you stop taking it, eventually it could reverse back. But I'm not going to let that happen. And most importantly, too, I want to stress how important it is to really believe that this will heal you. And I went into it with that positive mental attitude, and I've kept it to this day. And that's a big part of it, because our minds are a big part of healing. And the mushroom allows our minds to well, they furnish the actual healing, but the mind allows the healing to happen. And
I just want to say I find it so inspiring that after all the pain and suffering that you went through, being in a wheelchair, losing your memory, being totally dependent on other people, and having, no hope for getting better, that you still found it in yourself to say, I'm going to heal this, and you could believe in it, and you could have that hope and faith so strong. I find that's really, very inspiring.
I did hours and hours of research, to get me that positive attitude, and knowing that this is going to work. And again, I stress that you have to have that. And I bought a 1-year supply to make sure that I would stay on it. And I'm still using it today, but only 3.5 months in the cure, started the cure. It's an ongoing process. And actually, I'm still seeking new mushrooms to heal other things.
So you went from, having generalized deterioration of your nervous system, your endocrine system, with your thyroid,
Yeah.
you know, your digestion had problems, your
Right.
cardiovascular system, and within 2 years, you're now healthy.
Yeah.
Doctors are telling you that you have the body of a young man, and
Right.
you came all the way here to Portugal by yourself for which
Yeah.
is the first
Totally
big travel you've done, right?
independent. That's right.
Since your 20s, and yeah.
Yeah, in fact, I was grounded from flying because of my situation. I couldn't handle any turbulence or anything, so my doctor said no more flying. But I flew across the ocean and no turbulence, no problem. It was wonderful. So the 12 rivers that we were talking about with the 8 mushrooms, that also not only cured the thyroid, but it took all the plaque I had built up in my arteries, and I now have 100% blood flow as well. And my cardiologist said I have the heart and circulatory system of a healthy 30-year-old. Yeah. And I feel much younger. I feel much younger than I appear, obviously. Yeah.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So that's just such a powerful story, and I'm really happy that we can record it and share it with the world, and I hope that it touches people out there, you know. If it's touched you, really feel free to send it to someone you love who also might be suffering with some health conditions. I wonder if, to close this interview, Brian, you would like to share just any kind of message or positive thoughts that you've gathered through this incredible journey of recovery in your life.
Well, I guess most importantly, I got back my independence. That was very important to me. It's hard to have other people do things for you constantly. It's much appreciated. I mean, when you can't do something, to have somebody there. But now I'm able to help out equally at my home with my wife, and she doesn't have to have the whole burden, and that's what makes me happiest. Yeah. That's in a nutshell. That's the story. It could go on for hours, but we don't have hours. So, any other questions?
No, that's all. I'm just really grateful to have met you and to hear such a wonderful story, and I really wish that more and more people find their way to the medicine that can help them.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Yeah.
And it works for many diseases, not just MS, but many diseases.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for
thank you for the time. Obrigado, I should say.
Obrigado.